You see that, guys?
Yep.
Is that there? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So first of all, Kelly, thank you for having me. I am a huge fan of my home group. You know that. I feel like I watched you guys grow, and grow you do. Like, it's insane how big this company's gotten. And thanks to you, Ryan. OneGuard's a great company. And thanks for helping bring this to the realtors. You want to close that for me? Thank you. Okay, great. So let's talk COVID, because I think that's kind of why we're here. I will say this has been the most difficult time for me to appraise in my career, which has spanned 30 years. What appraisers should be good at is looking back at history and analyzing it and applying that today. That's really what we're doing as appraisers, is we're taking yesterday's information, digesting it, and making it applicable to today. That's how we come up with values. What we're dealing with right now is certainly unprecedented in the modern era. And that's what's difficult about appraising right now, is I can't look at another previous event and say, okay, well, that's how the market reacted back then. So this is how it must be reacting now. And we're at like a really weird window, because up until today, I think it's today, pretty much the end of April, right? I didn't have good numbers. And so I was forced to speculate. And so my process as an appraiser was to take all the comps that I'm using, which all closed prior or went under contract prior to COVID times, and then speculate on how I think the last 30 days is impacting the real estate market. And when I do that, I'm basically thinking back to my freshman year of college. I was this chubby little kid in a freshman econ class with 300 other people. And I just remember my instructor hammering us on the supply and demand curve, and how upward pricing on demand increases prices, and you know, if there's too much supply, it's downward pressure on pricing. And so my speculation was that here's what happened over the last 30 days. Our stock portfolios are down really significantly. It makes me sad. Unemployment is up substantially. And not only unemployment being up substantially, but employment insecurity is up significantly. Whereas somebody still has a job, but they're hanging on by a thread. I have a tenant who dropped off a check today, and she told me, she said, you know, the next couple of weeks could make or break her. And then there's that other element, which is buyers that are just saying, hey, I'm going to park myself on the sideline for a little while and just kind of see how this plays out, and maybe see if there's a drop in prices. So all those things are significantly reducing demand. That's my perception, at least. And so as an appraiser, I need to account for that. And I've seen over the last 3 weeks, 3 different methods that appraisers have used to appraise in the COVID time period. One is do nothing, say nothing. Like, I'm seeing every so often an appraisal where there's no mention of COVID or coronavirus or social distancing or anything about what's going on in the economy right now. To me, that borders on fraud, because at the very least, these are all really material things happening that warrant discussion and consideration in the appraisal. So to not mention it and keep your head in the sand, I think those appraisers are putting their long-term career trajectories at risk, because I think somewhere down the line, they're going to have to account for those omissions. The second batch of appraisers I'm seeing are actually making adjustments in the sales grid. And so what I mean by that, if you're looking at page 2 of the appraisal, which is your comps, and you see comp number 1, somewhere along that comp column is a minus adjustment to account for the speculation about what's happened over the last 30 days. And I've seen 2 appraisals like that recently. One of them had a minus $4,600 adjustment to all the comps. I don't know how he picked $4,600, but he did. and the other had a minus $10,000 adjustment. So he's taking all those sales prices for all his comps basically and reducing them by $10,000. I understand what they're doing. I don't do it that way because I'm putting a specific number on COVID, and I don't know how to justify a specific number, if that makes sense. Because again, I don't have historic data. That's how I was supposed to developing these numbers that are showing up in my appraisal. I don't have anything to look back on and say, oh, well, this happened then, so here's the dollar amount today. So I don't do that, and the appraisers that I guide through our national appraisal management company, Apex, and through Joseph's Appraisal Group, I say, let's not do that. The third, and I think more diligent and appropriate approach, is to discuss it in the appraisal. And when you're concluding a value, the way it works is it's really, really rare that when I finish an appraisal, I'm saying, okay, that's worth exactly $402,000. That's not really appraising. Appraising is more along the lines of, hey, this house is worth somewhere between $390,000 and $405,000. And that's what I'm going to call my comfort level. And I can justify anywhere in there and feel like I can make a coherent argument to support my conclusion. Whereas before, I had no problem in being in the top end of my range as far as comfort. I felt totally fine in the top end sphere. I'm now erring towards the middle and the lower end of that range. And what I'm saying in my addendums is, hey, look, I don't know what the dollar amount is. I just know it's something. I just know that there's reduced demand going on, and here's why, and here's how I'm accounting for it. Okay, so that's the way I've been handling it. There are exceptions, and we'll talk in a little bit, I think, about how I think you should prepare for appraisals. And I think that you should go into your interactions with the appraisers right now, assuming they're predisposed to be more conservative, okay? And so if you're in a scenario where you're the listing agent and you were on the market 3 days and had 6 offers, I think now more than ever, you need to make sure and properly convey that to the appraiser. Because again, if I'm walking into a listing with that scenario, you know, in the back of my head, I'm thinking we should be at the lower end of the range because of COVID, but you could maybe talk me out of it. In this case, say, hey, look, here's the days on the market. Here's a copy of the 4 offers that we received on this property. I understand where you might be concerned about COVID, but I'm telling you, in this neighborhood, in this price point, it wasn't really a factor, and we had a ton of activity. So I think that becomes more important than ever. So up until today, and everything we've talked about so far has been my speculation of what's happening in the market. But today I was waiting until the end of the month to finally start running numbers and see how things have borne out. And so what I did is I ran February closing numbers, March closing numbers, and now April closing numbers. And I updated them as of 12/20 today. And I really want to talk about our March and April closing figures for a second. So it looks like in ARMLS for March, there were 8,869 closings that showed up, which is a good number. That was still healthy. My gut feeling is we lost some deals in March that fell out of escrow, maybe with earnest money deposits being forfeited in some cases. But so I would guess that number would have been over 9,000. But 8,869 is a good month period. April, as of 12/20 today, there's 6,380 closings in ARMLS. That's a drop of 28%. And so kind of along the lines of what I thought was happening is kind of what did happen. Less closing means there probably was less demand. I also ran average sales prices for March and April on a price per square foot basis, and the average price per square foot sales price is down 6%. Okay, so that's a really significant drop for a 1-month period. So March, the average sales price per foot was $231.32. As of 12/20 today, that average sales price per square foot was down to $216.36. So that's a real number. Those are real drops. I also pulled my friend's report today, Beth Jo Zeitzer. She's over at ROI Properties, a good lady, and she cited something called the supply demand index, which I'm not super familiar with, but it dropped from 236.9 to 164. And what I can tell you is her description of that is that's plummeting, a plummeting demand. So significant demand drops. The other thing I'm saying in my appraisals is that I view this to be an immediate issue and a short-term issue, likely not a mid-range or a long-term issue. The real estate industry has been pretty good in this time of managing supply of listings. One would think when you see significant demand drops, like I believe we're seeing now in most segments, not all, one would expect the inventory to creep up or actually rise steadily and rather substantially. And I don't think we're really seeing that. I think I checked yesterday or 2 days ago, and I think we were in the 14,000 listing range, which wasn't a huge change from a month ago where maybe we had 13,000 something. So agents have been pretty good about managing supply. And so while we lost demand, maybe we had some people take their houses off the market. So those are kind of my COVID thoughts. Let's talk about what else is going on in the industry related to COVID. And that is, things are changing almost daily in my profession by the GSEs, which are Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA and VA, and we're getting new feedback all the time from these entities about how we manage interior inspections. Because I'll have my assistant set up an appointment for an appraisal inspection, and sometimes the sellers are like, come on in, come whenever you want. It's okay, we'll be home. We won't be wearing masks. You do whatever you want. And then there's others that are really fearful, and I understand both perspectives, and choose not to let me in at all. And to be honest with you, as my wife kind of gets further and further away from me on the couch, I'm a little more sensitive to it too. I generally don't worry about that stuff too much. But all things being equal, I wouldn't mind appraisals being exterior inspections when there's an opportunity for that. So the industry's kind of all got together recently and said that there are now protocol in place to where there'll be more occasions allowed for desktop appraisals and drive-by appraisals. So, and you'd have to go, and if you're writing anything down, there's a website that's a great resource to keep you apprised of what's going on in the appraisal industry. And it's my company's website, www.apex1spelledout.com. They're constantly updating it with feedback we're receiving from Washington, D.C. But so now there are scenarios where a borrower might qualify for a more limited appraisal, like a drive-by or a desktop. So there are scenarios where you may not get a phone call at all about access to your listing because of the program the borrower is applying for, and because of COVID, the appraisal's been downgraded to a desktop appraisal, which means the appraiser is not necessarily leaving the office at all, or a drive-by appraisal, which means you're probably not getting a call for access. So be aware of that. Most of my appraisals seem to still be full appraisals, but I do a lot of private party work, which they generally want us to come inside. So be aware of that and how that impacts you and your transactions potentially. I just was helping a friend of mine over at another real estate office who put a house in escrow in the FQ Story District, and the appraisal was ordered as a desktop. The appraiser never called, never got feedback, never asked for upgrades or features or anything, and came in like $25,000 below the contract price. And what's really problematic in this case is there's a basement, and I guess it's like a 100-foot unfinished basement that just houses the mechanicals for the rest of the residents. And the appraiser called it a 300 square foot finished basement. Have no idea where he got it. It certainly wasn't from the agents. And then subtracted that from the county record living area figure. So I think the county called it 1,300 square feet, which it was. And what the appraiser did for some reason was say it's a 1,000 square foot home with a 300 square foot basement, and really screwed everything up. And so now they're in a tough spot because they want to appeal the appraisal, but they also want the appraiser to come back out and do a full inspection. And this is, again, unprecedented times. So I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm not sure if the lender is going to authorize a full appraisal or not. So again, what I think you need to be aware of is boots on the ground is if there's something about your listing, or if you're representing the buyers about the house your buyers are buying that makes it special or unique or warrants an interior inspection, you should push for one. Especially if you're representing the buyer, I would let everyone know that you want your appraiser to get access for full appraisal, okay? Kind of critical because, again, let's say MLS, you marketed as 2,500 square feet because you had an appraisal done, but the county shows it as 2,350. I think there's a really good chance that if the appraiser doesn't get out there and measure it themselves, that they might use that county record's 2,350 square foot figure, which could lead to your deal not going through, lead to a deficient appraisal. Or if your owners have spent $130,000 over the last 6 months completely remodeling the home with all these different features, if the appraiser doesn't get out there and document it themselves, I know they have the MLS listing, but I think there is a propensity to maybe downplay your adjustments if you're not seeing them firsthand. Okay, so keep that in mind. Generally speaking, unless your house isn't nice, if your house is terrible, a drive-by probably suits you just fine. But if you have one of the nicer houses in the neighborhood, or you think your house is larger than the county records, I strongly recommend that you let the lender know that you want a full appraisal. Okay, so now let's talk about preparing for the inspection on those times when there is going to be a full appraisal performed. We have a script at Joseph's Appraisal Group that my assistants read to the homeowner, whoever I'm meeting, where I basically say, can you please turn on lights, open doors, let's practice social distancing, stay 6 feet away. And again, I'm not crazy paranoid about it, but my frequency of going into houses has me concerned. And so it's an uncomfortable situation, period. I'm putting gloves on. I hate wearing gloves. I don't know why, but I hate wearing plastic rubber gloves. I hate wearing a mask. I just hate it. Fogs up my glasses. Like, it's uncomfortable. And so honestly, I'm trying to get in and out of there a little bit faster. And I certainly don't want to put anybody at risk. I'd rather not have to turn on lights and open doors and do all that stuff myself. So, it's a really nice courtesy if you can get there a little early and kind of prepare the house. And I think that it will be appreciated if you do your best to, if there's sellers that live there, to get them out of the house. Normally, I have no problems. I'll talk to anybody. As you can see, I do not mind talking. But this day and age, this particular time period, it's helpful if there's fewer distractions. It's helpful if people are staying out of our way. And I just think that they'll appreciate it, and everyone can move on in terms of that. So I think that's kind of my COVID discussion for you. I do want to just, and I don't know, Kelly, if you're still there and you're managing questions, or if you want to, I wouldn't mind if anybody unmutes if they have any questions on what we've talked about so far. And then I'll kind of do an abbreviated version of my realtor toolbox, and then we'll probably end this a little bit early. Any questions so far? All right, you guys are easy on me. Okay, so I kind of think, give me 1 second, let me find the right slide, what to provide to the appraiser. So I kind of think there's a series of things that you can do to, what I would say, protect your client's best interests and do the best job for your clients and be helpful to the appraiser as well. I believe it starts with interviewing your appraiser ahead of time when you get a call from the appraiser. And again, recommending putting a note in the system early that you would like a full appraisal is probably the start of that. Otherwise, there's a chance you won't get a call from the appraiser at all. And on that note, I'll tell you this, that to me, just because a lender's ordered a desktop appraisal or a drive-by appraisal, that doesn't minimize my liability, and it doesn't minimize my standard of care that I owe everybody in the transaction. So if there's 50 photos in MLS, I might not call you. Otherwise, I'm going to call you and give you an opportunity to tell me things about the house that I'm potentially going to miss since I'm not being there. I think you're owed that opportunity. I just wish I could say that all my appraiser coworkers agreed with me on that. So in terms of interviewing the appraiser, I think the thing you're looking for is geographical competency. You want to make sure that the appraiser knows the neighborhood you're appraising in. So don't be afraid to just say, hey, I've got a couple questions. I just need to feel comfortable that you understand this neighborhood that might be unique for one reason or another, i.e. that FQ story district we just talked about. So the question that I like to ask is, can you give me an idea what geographical boundaries you're going to use to look for comparables? It gives you some insight. Does the appraiser really know the neighborhood? And really one of the important things about having an appraiser who's geographically competent, do they know the boundaries that you're really allowed to use to get your comps? So if you're at 52nd Street and Greenway, you'd like to know that that appraiser is not going to go to the west side of Tatum, okay? If you're in the core Arcadia district at Lafayette and 46th Street, you want some comfort knowing the appraiser is not going to go to 42nd Street for his comps. So I think asking him a couple questions, you can ask him about school districts or whatever else, at least maybe he'll give you some comfort. A couple other things that I would potentially ask is, are they certified? At our companies, we only use certified appraisers. There's a level below certification, which is license, and the level below that is trainee. I wouldn't trust my transaction to a licensed appraiser who might have only been in this business 6 months, or a trainee who literally could have been on 4 inspections their entire appraiser career. So I would request that the appraiser that's calling me is certified. The other thing is, there now are scenarios where the person that's calling you isn't an appraiser at all. It could be an Uber driver, honestly. And so there's something called a bifurcated appraisal, which is instead of the appraiser going out and doing the inspection, somebody else, could be a realtor, could be an Uber driver, is doing the inspection and then sending the pictures back to the appraiser. I wouldn't want that scenario either, because again, I'm at risk of doing a lesser job, giving a less accurate conclusion if I'm deprived of that interior inspection myself. And to throw it back onto you, how many buyers have you worked with that aren't teardown buyers that say, yeah, I don't really need to see the house, the MLS photos look fine, let's just get it? It doesn't usually work that way. And the reason is because walking the house, walking the yard, driving the comps is sometimes impactful. So for me, if I were you, I would only want to work with certified appraisers. So the other thing let's talk about is what I would bring to an inspection, because I think I would always meet the appraiser at the inspection. That's your one time to be impactful, to make a difference, to provide useful information. I would suggest that you don't be that realtor that says, hey, it's vacant on lockbox, go do your thing, have fun. And then you call and yell at that appraiser when he comes in low. it's just not effective use of your time. It's not effective because the appraiser at that point has already signed his name to a job, and he probably doesn't want to change his value. And so he'll look at whatever you give him on a rebuttal or request for reconsideration. But the reality is he might not be giving it fair consideration because he just doesn't want to change it. He doesn't want to admit he made a mistake, and to run the risk that the lender doesn't trust his work anymore. So I would always meet the appraiser, and I would always have a package. And in that package, I would always have a copy of the purchase contract, and stapled to the top of that contract, the final terms, the final counter that has the sales price, and I would highlight the sales price. You don't want the appraiser to miss that, because I hate to say it, but some appraisers are influenced by what it's under contract at. And if they miss that counter, they might come in low, and then they might not want to change it later. Then again, as we talked about earlier, multiple offers. Now more than ever, if you've had multiple offers, it's important that you talk about them. And I kind of like to see the offers. I don't need all 9 or 10 pages of a contract on a multiple offer scenario, but I'd like to see page 1, page 2, page 3, sales price, personal property, financing concessions, and then the signature page, so I know it actually was a real offer. Because that helps me tell my story to the underwriter, and that I use that as compelling reason to kind of go towards the high end of my range. And in this case, I would use that as compelling information to say, for whatever reason, this price range, this market, COVID's not as much a factor. And so providing multiple offers right now is giving you 2 potential benefits. So I would do that. In fact, I just had one that I left the other day, VA scenario, issued Tidewater, worried it's going to come in below contract, and told her what I wanted. Next thing you know, 4 offers that she had received are in my inbox, and I'll use that. I don't know where it'll end up, but I'll use that, and that's compelling information to me. Okay, the next 2 documents are documents that I suggest you create as best you can. One is an upgrade list. Give me a list of things about this house that makes it better than the standard typical house in the neighborhood. Why does your house warrant a premium over the others? And most of the things I'll see myself if I'm allowed an interior inspection, but the items that I can't see, you'll make sure I don't miss, i.e. insulation in the attic. Unless it's an FHA, I'm not going in your attic. I have no interest in going in your attic. But upgraded insulation is something that might make a difference, or it might count in the entire package of what makes this house special. So now more than ever, particularly in circumstances where there's not going to be an interior inspection of the house, you want to try your best to make sure the appraiser gets that upgrade list. It's really important. You don't want the appraiser to miss something, especially in a day and age where they may not be coming in your house at all. The next document I would put together is a chronological list of updates. Sounds really similar, but it's pretty different. And I acknowledge and understand that you, the listing agent, is at the mercy of the seller. If you've got a seller that keeps great records, they can give you a list exactly like I'm going to tell you should do it. But then you'll get a seller who might say, yeah, I've done this. I don't know when. I did this. I don't know when. I don't know how much it costs, but I'm pretty sure I spent about $50,000 since I bought the house. You can work with that. That's better than nothing. My ideal format on this document, give me the year and what was done during that year. And if you can break it down in dollar amounts, I like that. So in 2009, they put a 16-SEER air conditioning unit on at $5,800. In 2017, they replaced the composition shingle roof at $7,000, et cetera, et cetera. That helps me in more than one way. It's another way that I could see the upgrades. It's a way that I can justify my condition rating. Like if I want to say subject is C2, which means a highly remodeled home, having the list of things that were done and when they were done is really helpful to me. It helps me tell my story to an underwriter who's never been in your house before. So I like that, and I think you should make that part of your package whenever possible. So let's talk about comps. That's kind of the last thing I think you need to worry about. And then you've done your job, by the way. You provide all this information to the appraiser. You can't guarantee where the appraiser is going to come in at, but what you can guarantee to your client is that you did the best you could. You gave them good information. You engaged them. You went over information. You even opened up the folder and say, hey, there's a couple of comps I want to discuss with you specifically. Like, you've done the best job for your clients, and that hopefully is the goal here. So in terms of comps, providing comps, I would give somewhere between 3 and 10. 10 is arbitrary. At some point, I just kind of lose interest and stop looking at any of your comps. And I think 10 probably appropriately gauges my comfort level, I've decided. I wouldn't bring less than 3 comps because you'll never see an appraisal with less than 3. And so I want to make sure, if you give me 1 comp, what that means to me is that you can't find any other comps to support your value. So I know we're in trouble then. I think the 1-page plano is probably what I would give. I don't need the photo pages. I'm going to go look at the photos online. But if you can give me the 1-page plano, and then what I find helpful, if you have any insight on any of those comps you're providing to me, put some notes in like the top right corner. And so when I'm going to look at that comp, I can read your comments. Maybe you were in that house, which gives you an upper hand over what I'm going to find on my own. Maybe you can say, hey, the carpet was green, the house smelled like smoke, backs and arterial, or backs power lines, or just anything you think that the appraiser could potentially miss. This is your opportunity to provide that information. I would also suggest don't only look for the good stuff. Like if you're under contract at $500,000, I know there's realtors out there that when they run their MLS search, they're running sales from $500,000 and up. The problem is you'll miss stuff. Okay, I don't run searches with a sales price parameter in there because I don't want to miss things. Sales price alone should not be a factor in how a comparable is selected or not used. So instead of just fixating on your contract price, do a broader search so you don't miss the house next door that sold 2 days ago for $30,000 less. Instead of you ignoring that and keeping that out of your package, what I would rather you do is include that in the package and tell me why yours is better. Okay? That works really well. It gives you your chance to be more impactful on things. I think that maybe you should have a listing or 2 or a pending sale or 2 in the package that you provide. And my advice on that is don't focus on the super high listings. I can find overpriced listings without your help. The deal killers are sometimes in the low price listings. Like if you're an escrow at $500,000 and there's a model match 4 doors down that's listed at $480,000, the principle of substitution tells me, why would somebody pay $500,000 when you can get that for $480,000? I'm sure there's reasons, scenario by scenario, but I think you should include that $480,000 listing and tell me why yours is better. Maybe you represent the buyer and your buyer was in that one and decided this was worth $20,000 more. That's great information for me. And so that's it. That's the package. In terms of how I run comps, really quick, I am a huge subdivision workout guy. Location's the most important thing that I'm considering in almost every appraisal that I do. So I don't want to miss anything right here, right in front of me, right in my immediate subdivision first. So my first search is actives, pendings, closed sales within the last year in my immediate subdivision. Yes, I said go back a year. It doesn't mean that I'm going to use sales that are 11 months old. But if the only sale I have in my subdivision is 11 months old, I can account for any appreciation that's occurred over the 11 months. But if I don't have a frame of reference in my immediate subdivision and I'm comparing it to other subdivisions, I don't feel as comfortable with my conclusion. I want to have something that frames my location first, because that's a really important component of the overall value. So my first search is that. Look, if you're in McDowell Mountain Ranch and you do actives pending solds within a year in McDowell Mountain Ranch, you're going to get hundreds of comps, an unmanageable number of comps. So I wouldn't do that. Then I would break it down to my phase, my builder, my immediate community, and work out from there. The second search I do is not give me a mile radius from my house. It's not that. It's I look at a map in MLS and I draw the boundaries on the map, which is why that question that we talked about earlier to ensure geographical competency is so important. Give me the boundaries for my neighborhood, and then I'm going to put maybe a square footage parameter. Maybe I'll start at plus or minus 20%. If I've got a ton of comps, I'll go plus or minus 15%. Maybe I'll put a lot size parameter, a year built parameter. So I'm going to narrow things down to where I have, okay, these are the best comps with some general characteristics of the house considered and within what I call the geographical boundaries of the neighborhood. Any other searches I do after that are really specific to the property. What about the house I'm appraising is unique? Does it have a basement? Okay, I'm going to look for basement comps now. And maybe I have to expand my geographical boundaries because there's no basement comps that have sold within the last year in my immediate area. So I might massage the geographical boundaries to get basement homes. The one I'm finishing right here is on a lake in Scottsdale Ranch. And so I have my Scottsdale Ranch search, I have my immediate phase search, and now I'm doing a lake search. I want other comps that have waterfront lots like mine. Same with golf course. Same if I backed a busy street. I would, after I've done all my other searches, I would do a search for other houses that back a busy street. Because those are important characteristics about the home. They impact value. And I don't want to submit an appraisal that doesn't factor those items in. So then put it together, again, come up with your best 3 to 10 and put your notes on there. And I think you will find that you have a better success rate than you've ever had before with appraisers. You can always call us. Anything I can ever do to help. We field calls to help realtors all the time. Let me see if I have my information here. Is this it? Yeah. So if there's anything we can ever do to help support you and your business, because you're home smart. Sorry. My home group. Oh my gosh. You just popped back on, Kelly, just when I said that. My home group. We're here to help you.
Perfect. We do have 2 questions, Jay. Do you want me to read them to you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. What percentage of deals have fallen out of escrow due to low appraisals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've heard many stories over the past 30 days about deals falling out of escrow, sometimes walking away from security or earnest money deposits. I don't have a number for you. I'm not positive how to look that up, to be honest. But I know that's happened, and I don't know the number. It's a really good question. I hate not being able to answer it, so I just kind of stumble around until somebody asks me another question.
Yeah, really the end of the question said the percentage of deals since COVID compared to before COVID.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a great question. I suspect that number is up substantially. I'll tell you this, that if it were me and I were a buyer and I signed a contract in February and I put a $5,000 earnest money deposit and now it's March 20th and we're in the middle of things, I would consider walking away. I would have considered walking away from that deposit because it's an odd time to close on a house. Maybe I would try and negotiate an extra 30 days or something, but yeah, I would be a little nervous to buy right now. I would be.
Okay. Next question from, let's see, was what is the process if you feel the current appraiser is not capable? Who do you contact to request a different appraiser?
Great question. I'm sorry I didn't probably finish my thought on that. So I'm a big believer in, so I would politely get off the phone, and then I would try and get to the lender. And some lenders, when they're assigning appraisals, they either use an appraisal desk or an appraisal management company. Ultimately, you want to have a conversation with the person that's assigning the work. And I would just say, hey, I would get a hold of that person and say, hey, look, I don't feel comfortable with this appraiser, and here's why. I'd like a new one. And so you get the chance to recount the story directly to the decision makers. So I recommend calling the loan officer and saying, we had this problem, I would like somebody else. I just heard a story the other day where the borrower, the homeowner's a refinance, and the homeowner at the inspection asked the appraiser some questions, and these were answers that he got. The appraiser says he's never owned a home, which doesn't necessarily mean you're not qualified to do an appraisal. What I didn't like that he said was, we're getting ready to buy, but we're waiting for the market to plummet, and then we're going to buy. So we think this is going to go on for another 6 months, and we're going to wait for it to plummet. The homeowner wasn't confrontational, let him finish his work, waited till he left, called the appraisal management company and said, I don't want this appraiser, I want somebody else. And the appraisal management company assigned somebody else to the job. So it's important. It's important that you feel comfortable with the appraiser. There are some appraisal management companies and some banks, the big banks, I'll be nice and not mention them right now, are more rigid on reassigning appraisals, but it's important. And at our company at Apex, we think the most important part of our job is finding the right appraiser and having it be an appraiser who represents our firm well, represents the mortgage company well, and is geographically competent. So if that ever happened where you had concerns with an appraiser at Apex, we in almost every case would give you a new appraiser. It's important. So that's what I got. I can't believe I said that other company. I love my home group. I'm scarred from that.
I'm listening to you. Even if I turn off my video, I'm here.
Oh yeah, your face popped right back up on the screen.
That was coincidence. Last question was just for you to remind us some of the numbers you said. It was the drop in listings from March to April.
Yeah, let me give you some numbers here. So again, what I'm doing is I'm taking end of March numbers and I'm comparing them to April 30th at 12:20 p.m. Sales for March were 8869. Sales as of today were 6380. And I don't know, I don't expect that to change too much. So 6380, that's a 28% decline in the number of sales. So let's just say it does go up a little bit. Maybe we're at 25% by the end of the night. That's still a big number. And then the average sales price per foot, I did it by per foot because I didn't want all these fluctuations from really high or low sales, was in March 231.32 was the average price per square foot sales price for March. For April, it was $216.36, which reflects a 6% drop. And then that last number that I wanted to give you was the number I read just before we came on, the supply demand index. I don't know how it's calculated. I'm sure there's an economist on this call that does. Is down from 236.9 to 164, which was called a dramatic shift in demand and dramatic downward shift in demand. So that's what I got for you as far as that stuff goes. You guys are great. I love my home group. Kelly's one of my favorite people that I get to come in contact with. And in this case, it was nice that I have a sponsor on the call that I like and I've used, and I think it's a great company. So I just can't believe I called you that other company. So bummed. Anything else? We all good?
Yeah, there were no more questions. Thank you again to Ryan and OneGuard and all they do. And thank you for always doing this and sharing all your knowledge. It helps everybody, I hope.
My pleasure. I hope everyone stays safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.